Hi, and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Spatially Challenged Knitter and Friends. And I'm coming to you today from sunny San Diego. It's actually sunny now. The low clouds, night and morning low clouds are starting to break up. And we have, looks like we're going to have a nice day for once. We've been a little chilly lately, and where we can actually wear our knitwear in San Diego, which is great. My name is Deborah Whitehurst. You can call me Deb, and I will be known as a Spatially Challenged Knitter on Facebook and Instagram. I'm working on putting those accounts together right now and transferring Ravelry information over to those accounts. So hopefully they'll be up by the end of next week or so. And today is the 23rd of April. So we're actually in spring. So the reason I wanted to start this podcast, and the reason I think this podcast is going to be a little different than other people's podcasts out there, is because when I see a beginning knitters podcast, or I see a podcaster and they say, oh, I've only been knitting for 2 years or 1 year, and then they're making crazy amounts of sweater, like they come back with 3 finished objects and they're all sweaters, and they've gone into cables and they've gone into Fair Isle color work, and they're doing all this stuff. For me, I'm looking at them and thinking, oh dear God, why is this taking me so long? This has been like a 10-year journey, but to be fair, only sometimes 2 weeks out of the 10 years was I working on knitting. So what I decided was, I think there needs to be a podcast out there for beginning knitters, beginning intermediate knitters, where we actually have to ask for help, where we actually look at our garments and tell you the truth, and tell you what we did and how things ended up. And also that there needs to be somebody who's like the cheerleader for people who are like me, who say, I really kind of suck at this, but we keep going and we're getting better. Every project we make, we learn something new, and hopefully we can, put it over into our next project, and we actually learn something from the projects we make. So this kind of started for me back in the 2000s, I think, when my husband would go every summer and sometimes in the fall to Charlottesville, Virginia for 2 weeks in the summer and then 2 weeks in the fall. And my kids were older, my kids were grown. There's so many times you can go to Monticello in 90-degree heat and 90-degree humidity. And I had pretty much done all the things that I wanted to do, because he graded for years. I think 20 years he graded. And so I found a little shop down in the center called Magpie Knits, and it used to be I think it was the Knitting Lady when I first went there, and it's since switched names and is now Magpie Knits. And I wandered in, and miracle of miracles, they had air conditioning. And so that was the number one draw of why I started to knit, was because this shop would let me sit at a table for hours at a time, and they had air conditioning. And so I would come in, and the owners of the shop, Susan Bashline and Blair Williamson, and Susan's sister, and I want to say it's Rebecca, but I'm not sure, and so sorry if that's not your name, because she was one of the people that helped me a lot, were so sweet to me. They would put me down at the table and give me some yarn, and I bought some needles, and they would say, okay, just work, knit something, just knit some stitches. And so eventually this was supposed to turn into a scarf. And then every year I'd work on it for 2 weeks, bring it home to California, totally screw up to the point where I didn't know what I was doing, and put it away. And then I'd get it out in the next year and bring it back to Charlottesville and then they would sit me at the table again, and we'd rip out everything that I had done, and I would start over again. And this went on for a couple of years, and the ladies were just so nice. And I'd sit and talk to whoever wandered into the shop, and the shop dog was there, and I just had a great time. And so my daughter got married, and I really, really wanted grandchildren. So I said, okay, I want to make a blanket for a future grandchild, so that I feel like I need something where I can just knit, purl, long periods of time, so I can finally get the stitches correct in my mind, because this going back and forth on this little scarf was not working out for me. And so, and one of the reasons I want to do this, I have to show this piece of fabric first. This is my niece Nikki's blanket that my mother-in-law made for her. My niece Nikki is now 40 some years old. I won't out you, Nikki, on how old you actually are on YouTube, but this is still, my grandchildren are using this blanket. We have 2 Afghans on our bed right now that Ruth crocheted that we use every day. My husband has that chevron stripe that was so popular in the 80s in brown and gold and orange, that was so popular in acrylic yarn in the 80s. And he has that on his bed, and he had that in college. And so Ruth isn't with us any longer, but Ruth is with us. And every time I wrap this over the grandkids at night for their extra blanket, in case they're cold, we think about Ruth. And so I kind of that's why I wanted to start knitting. I wanted to start creating, and I wanted to create something that could possibly outlast me. And God knows no one would want to put a painting or drawing that I did on their wall and remember me with that. So I thought, okay, maybe I have a shot at actually knitting something that somebody would want to keep. So Susan and her sister started me with some nice, I think it's cotton yarn, because we're in California, and so we were all convinced that, babies in California don't need heavy blankets, and a cotton yarn blanket is what I need. And it was just one of these simple patterns that there is no pattern, because it's so simple, and you literally... But before I say this, this was never supposed to see the light of day. This was never supposed to go out of my house. No one besides my family was ever supposed to see this, because it is some of the truly most heinous, really bad knitting you have ever seen in your life. But it was my first finished object. And so I'm kind of proud of it, just because it's my first finished object. And the babies that we've wrapped in it didn't know it was ugly, and it kept them warm, and it worked. But it is truly bad. And so what it is you knit halfway, and then halfway across you change and you do garter stitch the other way. So it actually has a little 4 thing here in the corner. But this is how, honestly, how I find knitters, how I find a community of knitters. They're so supportive. Everybody in this shop could see how truly atrocious this thing is. And if you look at it, it's supposed to be garter stitch all over here. Okay, look at this. Look at this mess here. And all these little lumps and bumps, and these little, there's a big honking thing here. I don't even know what this is. And it's full of holes. The stitches aren't even. You can see in the ribbing what a disaster this thing is. But those women acted like I had created the Mona Lisa of baby blankets. And when I finished it, Susan said, oh, you have to teach me how to weave in the ends. And I believe this was I want to say 2.5 summers of knitting, because I actually tried to knit on it while I was home, which is why there's so many mistakes, because when I would get to something and make a mistake, I didn't know how to fix it. And never once did it occur to me to look for a local yarn shop in San Diego. I don't know why, but it didn't. And so I decided that I would keep working on it and finish it because I was just sure I was going to have grandkids and we were going to get this done. And so this is one of those things where, Susan in her mind is saying, bless her heart. And it's in that Southern bless her heart way where she said when I got finished, oh, I'm really particular about weaving in the ends. Let me take this to my house and I'll weave in all the ends for you tonight and I'll block it for you. And then you can take it home. And because I had like 3 or 4 days left in Virginia. Well, I know for a fact, Susan probably went home and tried to fix as many of these gigantic holes in it and stuff as she could. And, so it didn't look quite so bad. But she never, the next day or a day after that, it took a couple days to dry, I think. And they brought it in and everybody at that table oohed and awed over this horrendous baby blanket. And I took it home and, we had it for the first grandchild that arrived, and it's been used and used and used and played with, and it's been in a lot of blanket forts, and it truly is not a memory that I want to leave with them, but it's actually, a good memory. And it's because someone was kind to a beginning knitter who didn't know what they were doing, who had absolutely no knitting talent whatsoever, and told her to keep going. Keep going, you can do this. Keep going, she's going to love it. And my daughter did love it, as kind of truly ugly as it is. So this is my first ever finished object. So for all you beginning knitters out there who are starting with washcloths or who are starting with scarves, and you look at what you're doing and you put it out there, don't be afraid to show it. Be proud of what you did because you did something. You started. You could have nothing. You got a blanket instead, or you got a finished object instead. So I went from that baby blanket to my second baby blanket, which is very spatially challenged. It is made in my absolute favorite yarn ever. And this thing is 5 years old, 6 years old, and 2 boys use it all the time. Usually right now, it's lava on the floor for them to play the floor as lava, or when they want to build something and their stormtroopers need to get through lava and stuff because it's orange. It acts as lava a lot. But it's also sometimes the ocean. It wraps them up when they're watching TV. And it has just been through the wars. And it's one of those that's a superwash yarn. It's made out of EYB Fair Isle, which I'll show you a couple of balls of that in a second. And it's they've discontinued it. And I just want to cry because I feel like it is the best yarn for baby blankets ever. It makes a little Fair Isle rando pattern. It's pretty with the stripes. You could have gotten it in 5 million colors, and I highly encourage you to go on Etsy or check your local yarn shops to see if they have any of it. But this is one of those other ones that I started in Charlottesville. I bought this yarn in Charlottesville at Magpie, and they had just gotten it in. It was a brand new yarn to them, and I knew we had one boy, and we weren't sure what the other one on the way was yet, but I wanted something that if it was a boy or a girl, it could go either way and both kids could play with it. So I thought this was pretty, and my daughter loves bright colors, so I thought this was pretty great. So I said, I don't want to do the same pattern where you cross things in the middle. I'd rather just have it be more of a utility blanket because you use 4 balls of this EYB, and I'm gonna go out of the frame here for just a minute and get a ball of it, which I should have had ready, but oopsies. Podcast number 1. So it's looks like this, and it has it's 75% superwash wool from Australia and 25% nylon. and it's 246 yards. And so you use 4 skeins to do this blanket. So it's a pretty good sized blanket. This one's actually been put in the dryer, so it's shrunken a little bit, but it gets used a lot, so it gets washed a lot. And what you do is you simply cast on 180 stitches. I think it's like on a size 6-ish needle, and you mark off 20 stitches on one side, 20 stitches on the other side, and those are your borders. And then you knit the 140 stitches that are in the middle in stockinette, and the borders you do in garter stitch. Well, here's the spatially challenged part. It never occurred to me that the stitches going this way are bigger than the stitches going this way. So thinking that 20 stitches on this side should be 20 rows of knitting, my blanket, as you can see, has a beautiful border over here, and then it kind of teeny tiny little border right here that's about this big. So we go from a border that's this big to the edge borders that are this big. Since I've made this first blanket for my own grandkids, I've made probably 6 other baby blankets, the same pattern, the same, different colors, but same yarn, and have finally figured out the magic formula is weigh your ball of yarn in the beginning, do your border and measure how big this border is, and then make the bottom border the exact same size. And then when you get to that point, weigh your ball of yarn again. That tells you at the end of, and write it down for God's sakes, because you think you'll remember it and you won't. And don't write it on the ball band, because you'll throw the first ball band away, which I always do. So you weigh it, and then by the time you get to the 4th ball, you know how much to leave in your ball and when to start the end stitching on the baby blanket. So this was my second completed object that I ever did as a knitter, and has been well used, well loved, and has major flaws in it as far as the design goes, but they liked it, and so it's there. So once again, I've got an object. In fact, when I stole it from the grandkids today, when I was on the school run, Brad said, "Can I have my blanket back? I like that blanket." And I said, "Yes, I just want to show it. And it might be on TV," because he hasn't, we would show it to him on YouTube. He doesn't get to watch YouTube, but we would show him this on YouTube. And so I said, "Your blanket's going to be famous. It might get to be on TV." But he was very worried that I was taking it out of the house and he wasn't going to get that one back, because he likes this blanket and likes to play with it. So that is finished object number 2. So at this point in time, I've got one more thing I want to make, and it's not because I had any burning desire to ever make a wrap or anything in my life, but there was the most beautiful wrap in the store that was made out of this luscious yarn. It was cashmere and something. I didn't write it down because I wasn't taking good Ravelry notes when I first started. And it was gray, and then it had stripes of green in it. And I would go up not knowing as a beginning knitter and say, I would truly love to buy this sample from you and the person who knit it said, no, it was Susan's sister. And she said, but you can knit your own. You're good enough now. You know how to knit, you know how to purl. And the only thing that you have to do in here is do a couple yarn overs and you bind off. And it's like, she said, the rest of it is knitting garter stitch. You can do this. And so I knit the, hold on. We have this queued up so I'd be able to show it to you. I knit the Color My Stripes wrap, I guess it's called, by Lori Versace. I want to show you the page on Ravelry. Hopefully, oops, we got a little bit of a glare, but you can see the pattern. Oh, by the way, this is going to be one of those podcasts where we don't edit, so you get what you get. Sorry about that, but life's too short and I don't have time to edit. So this is the wrap. And to be very honest, I would have never knit this wrap by seeing this pattern, because the colors on this are, I'm sure, very attractive to some people, but it never would have done it for me. And it was the wrap in the store that convinced me to knit this wrap. So like, one tip that I would give to a beginning knitter is, if you see something and you think, well, this is kind of interesting, go to the projects page in Ravelry and see the different colors that other people have knit this in, because you might find that you really truly like a pattern that you would have never picked because of the colorway that the designer chose for that photo that shows up on Ravelry. So I knit this easy color my stripes, and I chose to do it in different colors of blue to go with my gray instead of the green, because I wear a lot more blue than I do green. And this has been one of my most commented on things. And yes, it's got my normal little challenges in it. You can see some of the little things in between the binding off aren't exactly perfect. And if you looked, you'd find some mistakes in the garter stitch. But it was so funny. I was so proud of myself. I had about like this much done. And so I sent a picture to the yarn shop, and I'm like, look how far I've gotten. I can't believe I'm almost done. Look, I'm going to get to the color soon. And they just said, knit, Nemo, knit. And so I knit and knit and knit and knit. And you don't get to the colors until almost the very end of it. And so that is one heck of a lot of garter stitch that you're going and doing and increasing before you ever get to the colors. But I wear this all the time. I get comments on it every time I wear it. It's a beautiful knit, and this yarn, whatever their cashmere yarn was that they had at Magpie, is the dreamiest, softest yarn. And it's been worn and worn. I've taken it on trips. I had it to bring to the show today. It was freezing when I dropped my grandkids off. I threw it around my neck to run down the playground with the kindergarten playground where we have to drop off. And it's the perfect thing to just sling on and wear as a shawl, or wear it around your neck as a wrap. So highly recommend this Color My Stripes by Lori Versace if you need to practice your knitting to get even tension, because you do a heck of a lot of knitting in this and you end up with something that you'll actually wear that's not a baby blanket. So that was my third ever finished object. Now, before I get into any other finished object, it's called the Spatially Challenged Knitter and Friends. And so I want to bring in a friend who's and did I say that I was filming at Needlecraft? Okay, so very kindly, I've been able to talk to my local yarn shop, one of my local yarn shops. I'm very lucky. San Diego's like a city of 2.5 million people. There are 4 yarn shops left in San Diego and 2 alpaca farms that also sell yarn. But out of the 4, I live 15 minutes distance between 2 of them. So I'm I live in Point Loma, which, if you are familiar with San Diego geography, it's that kind of point that goes down in front of the bay. You'll see it like when you're coming into the airport. So I live on the point. There's a yarn shop down in the point called Apricot Yarns, and then there's a yarn shop in Pacific Beach, another 15 minutes a little bit to the north of me, that's 2 blocks from the ocean, and called Needlecraft Cottage. And Megan has kindly said that I can film the podcast here at Needlecraft. And so she is my local yarn shop guru. You'll see her later on in the podcast for one of the or actually two of the segments of the podcast. So I feel like you've gotten to know me a little bit. I feel like you've gotten to know my knitting journey and kind of my knitting philosophy a little bit. I have a husband named Mike. I'm retired. I also have 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. And they luckily live in San Diego, so I get to see them all the time. And I have friends that we have been friends with them since the kids were 2. And so my friend that's coming in is actually one of my best friend's daughters, Jennifer, who mistakenly said, "Can you teach me to knit?" And when you look at the stuff that I've made and you hear my stories and you see the messes that I get myself into, why anyone would say, "Can you teach me to knit?" to me is just a crack up. But luckily, she's like one of those, she's a Luke Skywalker. She's a Padawan learner where she takes the little bit and she takes a lightsaber and, messes up a couple times with the lightsaber in the beginning. And then, whoop, she's gone. And she's gone way past where I can really show her anything now. But anyway, so I want to bring in a friend for the podcast and bring in Jennifer so we can show you how we started Jennifer Knitting and where Jennifer is on her knitting journey. Okay, welcome back to the Spatially Challenged Knitter and Friends. And here's my first friend that I'm bringing in.
Hi.
This is Jennifer Rick.
Yes. So I am Deb's third daughter, basically. I always introduce her as my other mom because Deb and my mom met when I and Deb's oldest daughter, Amy, were tiny babies. Mm-hmm. So, and then our families just bonded and we have been closest friends forever, for my whole life. So, we're going to talk about how I got started knitting and what I worked on first as a beginner knitter, spatially challenged as well. So, let me think about this. 2-ish years ago, it was COVID. It was during COVID.
Yeah.
I was watching a bunch of movies, as everyone was, and I love anything that Lily James is in. She's a British actor and she does a lot of period pieces and she's always wearing the most amazing clothes in all of her movies, and often they're knits too. She does a lot of movies set in like the 40s, the Potato Peel Pie Society.
Oh, the Guernsey.
Guernsey, that's such a good
yeah.
one. And The Dig is really good. Anyway, just Google her. She's got a lot of good stuff to watch. But I was really inspired by all her knits that she's wearing. And I thought, I'd really like to learn to knit. But then, I just kind of forgot about that for another year. And then after COVID, surprisingly, I didn't pick up knitting during COVID. I contacted Deb and I said, "Hey, Deb, you know how to knit. Would you teach me how to knit?" And so she did. So for context, Deb was a teacher in her career. So this was the perfect person to ask to teach me to knit, because Deb couldn't help but make me a curriculum. So she made me this really excellent curriculum to learn how to knit, and it consisted of 3 different dishcloths. So the first one just taught me straight garter stitch, so just knitting, right, back and forth. I think it's like, 30
like
stitches cast on and just in a square. So it was great. I had to rip out quite a few stitches and cast things back on. It's just so awkward to get the feel for holding your needles at first, which was funny. I had learned to knit, I think in high school, from a friend who would knit in our English class, which I'm sure our teacher appreciated. But all I did was this, back and forth. And she wasn't as interested in teaching as Deb was. So any mistakes that I made just remained, So this was the first thing I knit that I learned kind of how to undo as well, which is such a huge part of learning. And then the second dishcloth is this one, which I'll hold up a little closer. You can see this one taught me to purl as well, because I learned how to do stockinette. So that was great. And this was really exciting to me because when I had learned in high school from my friend how to knit, I only knew how to do garter. But I remember thinking, well, how do you knit stuff that's flat that looks like sweaters? You know? So I didn't understand the different stitches, and I didn't understand that you could create that, you know? So I didn't have any context. I was like, I don't understand. It's just everything made by a machine, and that's the only way you knit something flat. So that was great. So knitting this was really exciting.
And these are free patterns on Ravelry.
Yeah, they're I think
just Google dishcloth or search dishcloths on Ravelry, and you can find free patterns.
Hundreds, yeah. And then the third one taught me to increase and decrease. So it's knit, you know, in like a diamond shape. So that was a great skill as well. So these 3 dishcloths took me about 3 months. I think it was. I would go over to Deb's after work and sit on her couch and mess up a million times while she knit these elaborate things. And I was like, wait a minute, what did I just do? So that was great. But she was a very patient teacher. And then from there, I had to decide where do I want to go next. So really, as I said, my motivation was to make Lily James's wardrobe from all of her movies. And I thought, I really just want to make sweaters. So Deb said, you could do a sweater next. And I was like, all right, that sounds great. Let's do a sweater. So she helped me find... No, wait. So when I said you could do a sweater next, I was ready to put her into a short sleeved raglan sweater, which this is a raglan. But it was called, it's one that I made here at Sweater Club at Needlecraft Cottage, and it's called like the Easy No Frills Raglan Comfort, beginner sweater or something like that. And so this is what I was thinking, okay, well, I'll steer her toward that, pattern that I already know. And no, that's not Jen, because that's not Lily James. That's true.
And so we ended up with...
Yes, with the Petite Knit No Frills sweater, which is also, it's called No Frills, so it should be easy, right? But it was a really good beginner pattern, actually. There's no folded collar. And yeah, it's just a simple raglan. There's no, there's no like thickness to it or anything. It's just simply increasing. And the only thing that hung me up at the beginning was because it's top down, you're starting with all the hardest skills, right? So I had to do my short row shaping while increasing on the raglan, and I thought I might die at one point. I think I redid the neck 6 times. And our first spatially challenged problem was that we didn't realize when we printed the pattern, we had chopped off a very critical section of the pattern at the bottom of the printed paper. So I kept redoing the collar, and it was just wrong, and we couldn't figure out why this wasn't working out. Well, we're a good match. We're both spatially challenged for sure. For context, we both taught English, not math or science.
Not math. Yeah. Although there were a few elementary years in there, and I apologize to those children
wherever they are. Yeah. So, but eventually, I got through the raglan increases and the short rows, and then you're just knitting in the round, which was great. I did have. During this process, I had to learn how to read my knitting, which was probably the hardest thing about knitting. I feel like it really is comparable to learning a new language, because you have to recognize what the different stitches look like and what your mistakes look like after you've repeated them, so that you can learn to undo them. So that was hard, but it was great. I really enjoyed knitting this, and it's a really nice sweater. I used... what is the yarn? It's called Westfield Valley Yarns, and it's a combo of merino, silk, and yak, and it's really, really soft. Love it. It does pill a lot because of the fiber, but I don't mind. It's just really comfortable, and it feels like a sweatshirt, which is really nice for your first knit. Feels like something you want to wear a lot. And yeah, it was just a really fun process. I think, if I were to do another simple raglan, which I think I will, I'd like a rolled collar. And then I also just bound off in sort of the standard way, but it is kind of tight. So I think I'd do like an Italian bind off or something that's a little stretchier. But yeah, it was a really fun project. This took me 3 months. So I started knitting, I think about a year and a couple months ago, like maybe February of 2023. And then took three months for my 3 dishcloths. So it's intimidating. And then 3 months for this sweater. And then from there, I felt like I had a foundation to go forward with, which was perfect. So since then, I've been having a really good time. I made a lot of fun things.
Oh, stop it. This is what I'm saying. She is the Jedi master now. And she picked something, but I was like, okay, yeah, it says you have to pick up stitches. She's fearless. Where I'm like always, I mean, I remember sitting here at the table with Megan when I was doing this sweater, and it says you have to pick up stitches. So I picked it up and put it on my needle. Okay, I picked up the stitch, and she's like, no. And Jen, it's like, okay, you just stick it through, both legs of your stitch, and then kind of knit it and pull it back. And she's like, oh, okay. And she just goes over to the window, sits in the light, and just picks up stitches.
Well, the reason why I'm fearless is because I know Deb will fix it for me.
Oh, God,
if I mess up, I'm like, well, it's really a low barrier to entry here. I can just start and then throw it at her if I make a huge mistake. But yeah, it's been really fun. My new challenge has been knitting texture. So I went from this sweater to another basic simple sweater, not a raglan, but another kind of straightforward pattern. And now I'm working on some texture. So from there, I think I'll either go like maybe not lace, but something with sort of like what you're wearing that has more detail to it, or eventually color work, but I don't think I'm ready yet. Maybe I'll do some what's it called? Mosaic knitting, where it's color work, but it's not.
You got to do pressed flowers.
Yeah. I think I'd like to do the pressed flowers cardigan because that one's so pretty.
Oh, so. Of course. Oh my God. A cardigan. No, I'm not going to do the pressed flowers slip over. I'm not going to do the cowl. I'm going to do a cardigan. And I'm going to steek it too. Gosh darn it.
Because I'm motivated to make sweaters. And honestly, steeking is kind of enticing now that I know what that is, because I don't like to purl. So if you steek, you don't have to purl as much. You can just knit in the round. So if I just can throw it at Deb if I'm stressed out.
I have never steeked a cardigan. No, you can come into Megan.
Okay, I'll come into Megan. I'll come in here to a Needlecraft. But yeah, it's I feel like when you have good teachers, you're not so scared. So that's been the key. Okay. So yeah, that's my intro to knitting, and now I've knit for a year and a few months. And I'll show you in another podcast what I've been working on since then.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm wearing my first finished garment. The last one I showed you was the wrap, and this one is called the Easy Eyelet. The Easy Eyelet Yoke Light by Knititude, who is Chantel, and I'm sure I will butcher your last name, Chantal, and I'm very sorry, Megashima. And it's really pretty on Ravelry. And this one was what the ladies sent me home with when they sent me home with the orange blanket to knit on. I had found this yarn in their sale bin, and they had 3 skeins of the yarn, and I said, oh, what could I make with this? It's Kashgara by Shafira, and it's a fingering weight, and it's the color blueberry. I truly don't know anything except for I found it in the clearance bin, and it was like really good price
really nice
for
too.
For a fingering weight cashmere. And so they said, oh, here, you can make this. So they, punched it into Ravelry, and I did have to modify it just a little bit because I didn't know about gauge then, and well, that's a whole other spatial story that we can go into at a different time. And still worrying about gauge.
Yeah.
But so I did have to add 3 1/4 inches to the yoke, and also add extra length to the body. And then same exact problem
with the bind
and
off.
okay, and this was after this is where I found Needlecraft Cottage and Megan, because I was making these yarn over little holes and trying to do the sleeves and trying to do all the stuff that I had no idea what I was doing. And so I would come in for a knitting lesson with Megan, and she would help me get it straightened out and worked around and figure everything out. And then I got the whole sweater done and couldn't get the doggone thing down over my hips. And the first time I wore it, because I make most of my sweaters like a tunic length, and the first time I wore it, I broke the bottom thread. And so I'm like, oh my God, I've ruined my sweater. She's like, no, we can fix it. And she did Jenny's super stretchy bind off, which I would recommend, because look at this thing. This thing really stretches like, it's amazing. And of course you were going to do the Italian sewn bind off instead of Jenny's super stretchy.
I don't know the difference. That's the other thing.
You have to take a needle and sew back and forth with the one.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, so love this sweater, wear it all the time. I do, because it is cashmere, I always wear it with a blouse underneath, or wear it with like a jean jacket or something on the top of it, because it is kind of like weird it's fuzzy, and I feel like it's not a summer sweater. But I would totally make this as a summer sweater. I really highly recommend the pattern. It's cute, and it's not super hard, and you do learn. This was where I learned yarn overs in this sweater, and how to recognize you did a yarn over in the next row and not throw it off the needle or knit it, and think you've skipped a stitch and try and twist it around a couple times, because that's what Megan was dealing with when I came in to get help.
Megan's very patient.
Yes.
She'll be in a future episode.
Very, very patient. So this was my next finished object, or my first garment finished object. So do you have any whips?
Yes, I do have some whips. I am currently working on the Baby Aosta cardigan by the Knit Purl Girl. And so I really recommend this sweater. I actually have a finished version, which is right here. This is for my niece, who is due in June, actually. It came out pretty big. I didn't gauge swatch because I figured it's for a baby. I don't need to gauge swatch. It'll fit them eventually. But it did turn out really big. So I don't know if that's because of, I'm sure the Knit Purl Girl knows what she's doing. So it's a me problem. But it's fine because it'll fit her, like I said, eventually. I love this bright red yarn. This is Poppy by Santa's Garn in their Double Sunday. And it reminds me of Mr. Rogers.
Oh, it does kind of,
like a Mr. Rogers sweater. So all I need to do are add the buttons, which are the same color. My friend had some vintage, cute little like 20s looking buttons that'll match. And then my mom made a matching sundress, which is really adorable, which hopefully will fit at the same time, considering that the sweater turned out so big, but we'll see. But anyway, I love the texture on this. It's kind of like broken, what is it, fisherman's rib, broken rib, whatever. Anyway, it's 3 rows of knit and then 1 row of knit purl, and it just makes this really nice texture. Almost looks waffly in person, and it's subtle, which is really nice. So I like that. So I'm making another one. This one's for me because I'm due in September. So my sister and I are 3 months apart, which is really special, both having little girls, and so this will be for mine. And yeah, I've been really enjoying this pattern. Baby knits go by so fast, which is really great. You feel like, oh, I'm flying through this sweater. And so this has been really fun to make. I actually think I may make a couple more for friends too, because they make really nice gifts. And I bought these cute little hangers on Amazon, and I feel like that's just something that can be so cute hanging in their nursery, before they arrive or wherever.
Okay, so tell them about the hanger, what you're going to do to the hanger.
So the idea is, I saw on Etsy they sell hangers that are personalized with the baby's name. So I'm going to somehow maybe puffy paint or whatever the baby's name on here. So this will say Margot for my niece, which I just love her name. I can't wait to meet her. So that'll be really cute, and it makes a nice gift that they can display or not, right? It's up to them.
And we have a saying in the Whitehurst family that of course she's going to do that because she's a Rick, because her mother does quilting and all these things, and we would go to crafting things when the kids were growing up, and we were in a play group with 13 families, and so all the moms would get together and we would come over to puffy paint shirts or something for the kids, and our other friend Lockie, who we're in close contact with, refuses to do any crafts. I'm like, oh, come on, learn how to knit. No. And she's like, what my shirts look like when I painted. And I mean, we were the kind of bad shirts, and then there were the Rick girls who, and it's like, of course she's gonna puffy paint the things because she's a Rick.
Deb sells herself short, because who taught me to knit and who has made these beautiful items that she's shown you? So she's better than she said she is. She's very talented.
After lots of
you found your thing. Puffy paint might not be it, but knitting is definitely her thing. Yeah.
I'm trying.
Yeah, you definitely could do it. So
any other whips?
Currently that's about it. I started a sweater for my sister with some yarn I had bought for myself, and then thought, you know what, I think my sister, she had requested a dark green sweater, but I think I might rip it out and do something for her in the future, because I realized it's a pullover, but if she's going to have a baby and be breastfeeding, most likely that's not very convenient for that situation. So I think I might pull that out. So after this one, I kind of want to make myself something, but I don't know exactly what. Maybe the pressed flowers sweater, or just work on some more baby knits, because we have quite a few friends with babies coming. And then from there, I don't know. We'll see. What about you?
I do. Let me grab them. Should have had them ready, but I don't. I am a very non-monogamous knitter.
Well, and you get through them. That's the thing. I have to be monogamous because I won't finish a project if I'm not working on just one thing. I have a pair of socks that I take for travel, but I can't really juggle, which you can.
Well, I do have a pair of socks that they're my Padre socks, and so I only knit them at the Padre games, the home games, and so I take them and they go with me, and I sit in the stands and knit on the vanilla sock. And you should, oh my God, I'll have to bring it for the next podcast, because you should see what I did to this sock. I don't know what I was watching in the ball game, but you know how you do like your heel flap and gusset? Well, the little triangle's like in the middle of the gusset.
Amazing.
So I'm going to have to like rip that
Another
one
thing
out
for Megan to take a look at, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I can figure this one out.
We're going to just name plug Megan for a while, and then eventually she'll be revealed like Oz behind the curtain, right?
Who is that woman called Megan?
Yep, she's really... she's worth the hype, because she's helped us out of a lot of binds we put ourselves in.
Well, this one is Andrea Mowry's Wildwood shawl. And I got this a year ago at a knitting retreat. And my sister-in-law is my travel partner, my husband's sister, and she and I went on this tour of the East Coast. And so she was a good sport and went with me and read during the day and hung out by the ocean while I was at this knitting retreat in Searsport, Maine. Go Knitwits was the name of it, the Knitwits knitting retreat. And they had these shawl kits. And so I decided, she said, if I buy the yarn, will you make me the shawl? And I'm like, well, you've come to, all these knitting things. And when we travel, she lets me go into yarn shops in almost every city we go into. So I felt like, okay, yes, I need to make this for Pam. So this shawl has been in timeout it's been on, we called it, now when we put our knit in timeout, we call it going to the puzzle table, because Pam does jigsaw puzzles, and I was sitting next to her back at her house, and I had come back early so we could plan our next trip, and I'm trying to cast on and I'm screwing it up, and I'm trying to cast on and I'm screwing it up, and so it got put in timeout on the puzzle table for a long time. Yeah. And then I got going, and I'm really making good progress, and I was really proud of myself, and working, everything was kind of working, and I'm off a few stitches here and there, but wow, for me that's like nothing, and no major problem. And the cast off is still kind of wonky, but it's like I can live with it. She's gonna live with it.
Yeah, it looks really pretty. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's getting there. Well, so I got to one of the reasons I'm a non-monogamous knitter is because I screw up so many times. And so if I don't have enough projects, when I get stuck because I've screwed up, what do I do? Yeah. I mean, like I can't do anything till I can get into the knitting shop and get some help,
once it's what my mom calls a frustration craft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You need a palette cleanser after your frustration craft.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just actually brought it in yesterday because I had screwed up German short rows. I got cocky, and I had done all of these little stripes are German short rows. And so it's like, oh, I know how to do a German short row. I don't need to watch the video again. Well, of course, I did it wrong and ended up with like a little hole in it. And I had dropped so many stitches around these little holes. And so I brought it in, and I'm like to Megan, okay, well, can you fix it? What should I do? And she looked at me and said, I'm so sorry, Deb, but really there's no way to fix it, so it's not going to show. You're going to have to rip out all of these. Well, this shawl is stinking 300 and some stitches a row now. And the thought of ripping all of that back and all of these short rows back, I would have to go back 1, 2, 3, like 10 rows to get down to where I had made the mistake. Mm-hmm. This is where not being a perfectionist in knitting helps you, because I'm like, F it. Pam's never going to know.
Exactly.
I'm going to just take a thing of blue yarn and I'm going to fix this thing. And I watch a lot of podcasts, and they say there is no knitting police. No one is going to come look at your knitting.
For sure.
Only you know.
Yeah.
Pam will never know. I mean, she'll know now if she sees this, but she would have never known if I had just gone in there with blue thread and didn't show this on TV, that I had made 2 holes in her shawl.
And honestly, I can't see mistakes in other people's work, even now that I can read knitting better than I could. I can't read everything, but you don't notice it in other people's work, only your own. And so it's a good lesson in life to let things go.
To let it go and realize that, it's like those Persian carpets. I say my knitting is like one of those fine Persian carpets where you have to put a mistake in because only God is perfect. Well, I don't have to worry about putting the mistake in because I will just do that naturally.
It comes naturally for us. Yeah, exactly. Always find one here or there, right? Yeah, exactly.
So this is the Wildwood shawl, and hopefully it will be finished by July-ish, because I'm going to go back and plan another trip with Pam in August, and I want to give it to her. So
I love the colors.
Be done. And then the next one that I'm going to talk about now, is for my mom for Mother's Day. I always get her flowers, and I feel like both of my sisters get her flowers. So she has 3 things of flowers that are then the next week are dead. And, it's like we all say, Happy Mother's Day, Mom! Wink, wink. We don't live in the same city as you. Here, have some flowers. And so I thought, I'm going to make her something handmade. So I stole Jen's Easy Knit Dishcloth book.
That's true. I didn't show my dishcloth, did
the very broken.
I bought this dishcloth book after I made the 3 that Deb made in my curriculum.
Yes.
But I just made one, and it's pretty hysterical. So I'll have to bring it for the next time I'm featured on the podcast.
So we're actually making the same one, only the title of it is Broken Basket Weave, and she calls hers the Very Broken Basket Weave.
Yeah, mine's very broken.
So I've got this much going, and you need, I'm like 6 inches in, and you can hopefully see the stitch pattern. It's
really pretty
woven looking stitch pattern, and it's made out of a blue cotton something or other, and it's supposed to be 10 inches long, and I've got this much yarn left, so it's wherever it's going to end is where it's going to end, and I'm not going to fret about it. But and then I think I'll make her a little, this is supposed to be a towel, and then I'll make her a little dishcloth to match, and that's got to be done by Mother's Day, so I've got to get going on this. But I think she'll like it. And I think this I got for like, it used to be $11.99 when it was published. This is actually, someone bought this, and I think I got it in a sale for 50 cents somewhere. And it's a bunch of different pattern dishcloths, so I'm just going to pick something that goes kind of with the broken basket weave and do one of those for my mom. So another tip for beginning knitters is a lot of yarn shops and book sales and garage sales will have old knitting pattern books that you can pick up. And I wouldn't necessarily pick up a dishcloth book, but to get all these patterns for, next to nothing, it gives you more than the free ones on Ravelry as a choice. So look for used books too for basics. I wouldn't necessarily say do a vintage sweater right off, because some of them aren't very size inclusive, and they don't hold your hand as much as modern patterns do. They just expected that you knew how to do things, and I don't. And so
same.
Yeah. So those are my 2 whips that I kind of have going. I have like 5 or 6 other whips at home, but I'm not really working on them, so I didn't bring them.
The joke is that Deb never knits for herself because she's always knitting for someone else. Occasionally you'll finish a pair of socks for yourself.
Yeah, randomly.
She has a beautiful purple sweater that she wants to show you that I really want her to finish, but she keeps getting held up with gift knits.
Yes. Okay, so that was our works in progress. Okay, the next segment of the podcast, because this is a beginning knitter podcast and it is a problem fixing podcast, is called Help, Can You Fix My? And so I want to introduce you to the lovely Megan that we've been talking about so often during this episode. And what I was working on as a whip, and Jen said, oh, she's working on a purple sweater, is this purple sweater, which I do have a picture of somewhere in here, in the pattern. It is the Knitting for Olive fern sweater. And I'm using the Mod Yarns Straight Up DK, which is in the color Phoebe, which is 100% superwash merino, and it is made in Italy, I think. No, Fresno. Dyed by hand in Fresno. So this is hand dyed, but it is spun somewhere else. I don't know. But anyway, so this is one, and I'm holding it with the Handmaiden Super Kid Silk, 70% fine kid mohair, 30% silk, in the color, who knows? But it's a purple. And so I thought the 2 purples together would look pretty. And I really do like the color that I'm getting from these 2 purples held together. So I've said all along, I'm never exact on my stitch count. No matter how hard I try, I just can't. So and the other thing I've learned is you can't trust yarn. Like you do something, you think it fits perfectly, you block it, and it grows 500 million yards, or it shrinks, and you're like, what? It fit me perfectly before. So I block now as I go. So I actually did the neck, blocked the neck, and so that I could make sure that everything was right. I'm like blocking hunk by hunk now as I go. So when I get down to the point where I have to, it's a top down sweater, when I have to make sure that I got the yoke the right size, I'll actually put it on the barber cord and block it again. So I am really careful about finding places in the pattern to make sure that my stitch count is on. And that's why we're here now, because I counted my stitches and I decreased to get the right amount of stitches before I went out of stockinette and started the all over lace pattern that's going to go down to the bottom of the sweater. And I know if I screw it up now and don't get it exactly right now, then the whole sweater is going to be off. However, I can't read the knitting in this because it's not stockinette, it's not garter stitch.
Right, it's a little bit of lace.
It's lace. And not only is it lace, but it's got this fluffy yarn, so it makes it even harder to see. So I'm here to beg Megan to help me figure out how to fix my sweater and how to read lace when you're knitting or when you're unknitting, tinking back, to know what you're doing. Because with all these yarn overs and stuff, that's what I really worry about. I'm going to totally screw the whole thing up. So, oh guru.
Right. So, well, first of all, you were talking about tinking back. And honestly, when I do it, and I'm trying to show it this way, maybe, and we'll take these off in a moment, but I'm pulling on that working yarn so that I can see where the stitch is below. This probably isn't showing up very well, but there's like there's going to be a hole that comes below. And I'll show Deb firsthand. But the other thing I want to look at is on your pattern, what you just did was...
I was down here.
Okay.
And I was doing knit 2 together, knit 3, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3, slip 1, knit 1, pass 1, the stitch over. So I was doing that repeat, and I was supposed to be okay. I think I had my 242 stitches on that row, and then I did this thing and I just totally... I'm messed.
Okay. And then the other question is, you don't have a little check mark here.
I don't, but I know I did it because I'm underlining things down here.
Okay.
So I should have checked it.
Okay. That was my only other question.
Okay.
Is if you had jumped ahead or not.
No.
So if I'm looking
She knows me very well.
So if I'm looking here at the beginning, it should be
Knit 2 together. Knit 3.
So there's not a knit 2 together.
What? But is there a knit 3?
There's knit 3.
A yarn over?
Nope.
Oh,
that's why I'm thinking that you didn't do it.
So how do I find out where I am in the pattern?
So let's go back.
This is real life. This is not
this
planned.
is real
this
life.
is real life with me. This is what Megan goes through regularly.
And the other thing to start this, I'm not going to bore everyone on the podcast, is me actually counting.
Okay.
To see.
Okay.
Because that's one way we can figure out where you are as well.
Okay. So I know I was right at the 198. Okay, so maybe I was screwed up here because I was supposed to have increased 44 and gotten to 242. And I think maybe that you're right. I think I was doing this and I was supposed to be at 242. And when I counted to start my section, I was way off.
You're supposed to be at 242 after you do this increase round.
Well, you mean, so I might be right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, see, why would Jen ask me to teach her how to knit? So I might be right. And okay.
Yeah, I think
And I
you
read
might
the pattern wrong.
But
We've got to count.
we got to count.
Okay. We'll pause and count and come back and tell you the end of how to fix my. Okay, back after the thrilling stitch counting. And I'm supposed to have 198 and I have 190. And Megan is right. I am not where I thought I was in the pattern. I did not finish that second set of increases. So I just said, okay, but it's a knit round. So, and I'm -8, I'm off 8 stitches. So can't I just add 8 in since it's a knit round?
And I said no, because it could mess up her lace pattern. So it could shift or just be off in some direction.
Okay.
And you would probably see that jog. Probably.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
So what would I have to do then to get myself out of this mess?
Well, you need to finish your repeat rounds,
Okay.
because here we're going back to reading the knitting. You should have had 2 knit rounds after the lace round. So I'm looking at a yarn over here where my thumb is, and also trying to decipher
If I did 1 knit round?
if you did 1 knit round or 2. I think you just did 1.
Okay.
One way I can figure this out is by doing a little bit of tinking.
Okay.
So let me do that really quickly while we're on camera.
Now, question while you're doing that.
Yes.
So if the round 3 was just knit to end of round, if I do that and I already know I'm short 8 stitches, then I've got another second knit row that I've got to rip out, right?
No,
Because this would be.
you're down here.
Oh. Okay, I'm so sorry.
okay.
This is real
okay.
life. This is real life. Okay, so yes. So if I did that, I counted the stitches. I needed 198. I have 190. But if I knit again to the end of the round, I'm still going to have 190.
Correct.
If I do this round 3. Okay.
But I'm wondering with your lace round if you don't. Well, no, because it's not an increase round.
No, because you do 1 and 2 over again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm wondering, like, ugh, where would I have to rip back to? I'd have to rip back to this, wouldn't I? And start this
possibly.
increase round all over again.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So we're not like talking, I can't show you, I mean, this is a paid for pattern, but each section has increases at the top, and then it has knitting instructions, and then another section at the top and knitting instructions. And so that's what we're doing. I can't show you too much because this is a paid for pattern. But what she's saying is I need to basically rip out this section and get back to here and make sure my count is okay here. And it wasn't, it was off by 3. And so I did something to get it to the right.
Did you start with your 154?
Yes,
Okay.
but I always screw up.
So if you start with your 154 in that section, that's probably where you're going to have to rip back to. And when I say her, it's probably going to be me.
It's going to be Megan.
Yeah.
And I have to rip back to just at the end of the turtleneck. Oh.
No, not that far. Well, is it that far?
Yeah, I think so. Yoke. Yeah, change needle size. Next round
Is an increase
is the
round.
increase round. But Okay. It's, you know what, and this is something else that I found. It's less painful if someone else rips it out for you than you ripping it out yourself. Sometimes if you just go away and look at pretty yarn and you come back and it's been ripped out to where it needs to be, you're better off that way.
And sometimes somebody is nice enough to even knit it back to where you left off.
Sometimes. But anyway, so now you know, honestly, like I got to the point where I can see my mistake in a stockinette, see my mistake in a garter stitch. And I literally was at the point in that orange blanket where I was traveling in Scotland, and we just happened to be at a bed and breakfast with a bunch of knitters, and I picked it up and I said, oh crud, why did I bring this with me? I've got a mistake and I don't know how to fix it. And they were, honest to God, these people in the bed and breakfast were a group of knitters on their way to the Shetland Islands. And they said, oh, we'll help you, honey. And they picked it up and found where I had dropped a stitch and showed me how to bring it back up and fix it. So knitters are the nicest people around, and they really do help each other. And so thank you, Megan, for not thank you for telling me I got to rip it back, but thank you for telling me how to fix my knit. Goodbye. So the next part of the podcast should be the part where it's patterns we love, fantasy knitting, because I have so many patterns in my queue that are like way beyond my skill level, and they would be fantasy knitting for me. Or ask a designer to, because I've seen things and there are things that I would like to have in a pattern that no one's done. And so I figure if you put it out there, maybe someone will be watching and they'll decide that that's something they could make. And so you can only ask, and hopefully someone else can design a pattern, because God knows I will never design a pattern. That involves math, and we all know, we can tell right now by our last section, this is not my strong point. So in our second episode, we promise we will have that in, but we've gone a little long today with the first episode and all the introductions. So we will be skipping to the next section, which is updates and what's new at Needlecraft Cottage around the shop.
Welcome to the Needlecraft Cottage. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about what's new in the store as of last week. We had our big grand reopening. We've had the store for about 4 years, but because we bought it during COVID, never got to do a grand reopening, so that just happened. Got a lot of new yarn lines in the store, but first of all, I wanted to show everyone we have a Mother's Day promotion going on to surprise mom with a yarn bouquet. So you can choose the yarns you'd like, and we'll wrap it up like a bouquet for mom for Mother's Day on May 12th. Let's go inside. So first of all, right off the bat, we will come into here, our little entry. Malabrigo is on this wall. It's one that we've had but haven't had in a while, so we consider it to be one of our new additions. We have Caprino, which is a DK weight. Washted is a single ply worsted, and then Rios is our applied 100% superwash merino, also worsted. And then if we come into here, we can show off our little baby corner real quick. So lots of babies coming into our lives, so having a little inspiration wall for the little ones is great. So, and all of our friends have made stuff for it. And then coming into here, well, first of all, in the middle of the room, we just got our Blue Sky trunk show today that we're going to be showcasing for local yarn store day on April 27th, this Saturday. And from Blue Sky Fibers, and also in the trunk show, we have Techno over here. It's kind of hiding behind our little rack. So we got Techno here, and then we have Skyland here. Techno I know is like a chunkier, or a light bulky, excuse me. Skyland is a DK weight. We have Baby Alpaca, which is a sport weight on these 3 shelves. And then we have Metallica, which is also a sport weight. And this is like, I want to dive into a pool of Metallica. That is Baby Alpacas and silk. That's why. So, whoops, this is gonna fall. So coming over here, we have our Brooklyn Tweed, Arbor, Dapple, and Quarry. So that's a new addition for us. Arbor and Dapple are both DK weights, and Quarry is our chunky weight. On the wall to the left of it is Ultra Pima, which is 100% Pima cotton from Cascade Yarns. This is one that we've had consistently. It's a good choice for the knitted knockers, which is something that we are making for our charity knits, which is Tuesdays noon to 2. And we'll have more information on our website about that. But essentially, you can make the knitted knockers and drop them off to us. You can either knit them with us in the store, or you can just bring some in that you've made at home. And then coming around this way, I think this is Deb's favorite wall right now. It's a little messy, a little picked over, but we'll clean that up in a moment. But this is our Encore worsted. This is one of our bread and butter yarns for the store. 25% wool, 75% acrylic. It's a great yarn for hats, for blankets. I've made sweaters out of it. It's kind of an all-around great yarn. It's really great to learn to knit or crochet with, because when you rip it out, it doesn't shred. So, and then we'll come back over into here. We've got new notions. Lots of stuff from Twice-Shirred Sheep, lots of stuff from Fox and Pine, and I've got more coming. So little things like stitch stoppers and stitch markers and darning needles and lots of little, can't think of the word, little knickknacks for your knickknacks for your knitting. There we go. Coming into here, we have Mayak on our cubbies here. We have 5 different lines, I think. The Baby Yak and Silk, Baby Camel, and then I think over here is our Baby Yak, oh, there's Baby Yak Medium, and then we have Baby Yak Lace Weight. And on the other side, I'll hold some up so that you can see. We have Tibetan Cloud, which is 100% wool. And I really want to make something with this color. Behind you is Knitting for Olive. We have 5 different lines, and we will be getting in one more. So in store right now, we do have cotton merino, we have merino, we have the no waste wool, which is recycled wool and merino, and then on the wall over here is the soft silk mohair and the compatible cashmere. So very excited to have those. Now, Knitting for Olive and Mayak, I believe we are exclusive retailers in San Diego for. So, and then last but not least, on our sock wall, Heritage is another yarn that we constantly carry from Cascade. It's a great sock yarn, lots of different colors. This is even half of the colors, which is amazing. And then on the other wall is Kobasi, which is a cotton bamboo silk blend sock yarn, but it's great for those who either cannot work with wool and still want to make socks, or those who cannot wear wool and still want to have hand knit socks. Last but not least, we do have Zauberball in 2 different styles. We have the Zauberball Stark 6 here, and then we have I think this one's crazy. This one is crazy. So we've got those 2. So in this basket here. So yeah, we do carry some hand-dyed fingering weights. We've got Ba La Jolla, which we will be getting more of, as well as Apple Fiber Studio, who has been one of our trunk shows during the San Diego Yarn Crawl. So yeah, we do plan to get both of those, more inventory of those in very shortly. So yeah. It's Needlecraft Cottage. This is the yarn side of Needlecraft Cottage. We're located in Pacific Beach, about 2 blocks from the beach. Crossroads are Grand and Bayard. So we would love to have you here if you're visiting San Diego and visiting in the area.
I'm going to close today's video in the socks section. If you have questions, please feel free to put them into the comments. If I figure out how to do like and subscribe, I will ask you to like and subscribe. And we will read your comments and answer them if we can. Hopefully you like the podcast, and we will see you in about 2 weeks with another podcast. So I wish I had a great exit line, but beginner knitters, we are here for you. Beginner knitters, we are you, and don't give up, because you can see you'll make mistakes, but it's worth it to keep going. You'll get something out of it in the end. Okay, bye-bye.
This is me knitting in the wild on the train from Tokyo to Kyoto, Japan. We just got our little towels, and I'm making the pressed flower socks. It's always fun to knit on a train. I think it's really relaxing.